She was ready to walk away, until he did this. The beginning of the distance. Nora stared out of the car window, asking herself a question no wife ever wants to ask. How did we get here? They weren't shouting. They weren't fighting. But the silence between them, it was louder than any scream. Nora worked as a nurse while David worked as a software engineer. They had a 6-year-old daughter named Sophie, full of joy and questions and bright Sunday drawings that filled the fridge door. Nora sat quietly in the car, staring out of the window as the rain hit the glass. The city lights looked blurred through her tears. She was tired, not just from work, but from her marriage. David sat in the driver's seat beside her, his eyes fixed on the road. He hadn't spoken much the whole ride back from dinner with friends. Nora wasn't surprised. Lately, silence had become normal between them. It hadn't always been this way. 5 years ago, they were happy, really happy. They lived in a small apartment in Manchester, worked simple jobs, and laughed over silly things. They dreamed together. They even stayed up late planning their daughter Sophie's future. But somewhere along the way, things changed. David got promoted. His new job meant more money, more hours, and more stress. He started coming home late, eating dinner alone, and spending weekends glued to his laptop. Nora tried to be patient. She understood he was working hard for the family. But then came the forgotten dates, missed school events, and the emotional distance. It felt like she was raising Sophie alone. "Can we talk when you get home tonight?" She had texted him that morning. David replied, "Busy today. Can we talk tomorrow?" That was his answer, every time. Back at home, Nora helped Sophie into bed. The little girl smiled and kissed her goodnight. Her innocence made Nora's heart ache. She didn't want Sophie to grow up in a broken home. But she also didn't want her to grow up thinking that this cold silence was love. When David finally came upstairs, Nora was sitting on the edge of the bed. "We need to talk," she said quietly. David sighed. "Now." "Yes. I can't do this anymore, David." He looked at her, confused. "Do what?" "This marriage. This life where I feel like a single mother, even though you live here. I'm alone. David. I've been alone for months." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Nora, I've been working hard. You know that. That's the problem. You think working hard means loving your family. But we don't feel your love anymore. We feel your absence." David looked down. "I didn't know you felt this way." Nora shook her head. "Because you stopped asking. And I stopped trying." The next morning, Nora packed a small bag and took Sophie to her mother's place across town. She needed space. She needed to think. David didn't stop her. He just stood there by the door and watched her leave. Learn these lessons. 1. Emotional neglect is just as damaging as physical absence. 2. Love needs presence, not just provision. 3. Most relationships don't end because of one big fight, but because of slow emotional distance. The wake-up call. Nora sat at her mother's kitchen table, holding a warm mug of tea. Her mother, Mrs. Harris, sat across from her, watching her closely. "You don't look happy, Nora," Mrs. Harris said gently. Nora sighed. "I'm not. I don't know who I am anymore, Mom. I feel like I gave my whole self to David and got nothing back." Mrs. Harris reached over and held her hand. "Marriage is hard, love. But sometimes people forget that love needs daily care, like a plant. Stop watering it, and it dies." Nora nodded slowly. "But what if I'm the only one watering it?" "Then you step back. Let him see the plant dying. If he still doesn't care, then you'll have your answer." Meanwhile, David came home to an empty house. It was quiet. Too quiet. He walked into the living room and saw Sophie's drawing on the coffee table. A simple picture, their family holding hands under the sun. But the sun had a frown on its face. And the dad in the picture was standing far away from the mum and daughter. David sat down and stared at it for a long time. He realized how blind he had been. Work had consumed him. Promotions, deadlines, late meetings. He thought providing more money meant being a better husband and father. But now, the people he loved most were gone. And it was his fault. That night, David couldn't sleep. He lay on the bed Nora once shared with him and remembered the early days of their love. He remembered their first date at a small burger joint. The night she told him she was pregnant, and he cried. How she used to wait at the door for him with a kiss. He had taken her for granted. She hadn't changed overnight. He just stopped noticing when she started to fade. The next day, David called in sick and drove to Mrs. Harris's house. Nora saw him through the window but didn't go out. Mrs. Harris opened the door. "You look tired, David." "I haven't slept," he admitted. "I just need to talk to her." Mrs. Harris nodded and let him in. Nora stood with her arms folded. Sophie was playing in the back room, unaware. David looked at his wife. Her eyes were cold, but her face still looked like home. "I messed up," he began. "And I didn't come to fix everything in one speech. I came to own my part." Nora didn't respond. "I thought being a provider was enough," he continued. "I didn't see you crying silently beside me. I didn't hear the words you never said. I didn't notice the pain in your smile." Nora looked down. A tear slid down her cheek. "I never stopped loving you, Nora. I just stopped showing it. And for that, I'm sorry." For the first time in months, she saw sincerity in his eyes. But she wasn't ready to move back. "Words are easy," she said quietly. "But love is work." David nodded. "Then I'm ready to work, even if it takes time." Over the next few weeks, David showed up. He picked Sophie up from school. He cooked dinner and brought it to Mrs. Harris's house. He turned off his laptop at 6 p.m. He wrote Nora handwritten notes, short, honest, and full of remorse. He didn't ask her to come home. He just proved, day by day, that he wanted to change. One evening, Nora came home from work and found a small box at the doorstep. Inside was a notebook. On the cover it said, "Things I forgot to say." She opened it. Page 1, "Thank you for being the mother of our daughter." Page 2, "I miss hearing your laugh at night." Page 3, "You are not invisible to me anymore." Page after page, David had written something each day. Not grand poems, just real words from a man who finally understood what he had nearly lost. Nora closed the notebook and cried. Learn this lessons. 1. Apologies are only the beginning. Change proves the truth. 2. Consistency is more powerful than grand gestures. 3. Love can survive separation if effort is real and persistent. Coming home. 3 weeks had passed since Nora left. 3 weeks of space. 3 weeks of change. 3 weeks of watching David try, every single day. Nora sat in the quiet bedroom at her mother's house. She looked at the notebook David gave her again. She had read it so many times the pages were starting to curl. She remembered one line on page 17. "I'm not asking you to forget the pain. I'm asking for the chance to heal it, with you." She closed her eyes. Her heart still hurt, but it was no longer numb. Maybe he really was changing. A talk with Mom. "I don't know what to do," Nora said, stirring a cup of tea at the kitchen table. Her mother smiled gently. "Do you still love him?" Nora was quiet. Then she nodded. "Yes, I do. But I'm scared. What if he goes back to his old ways?" Mrs. Harris took her hand. "Love is always a risk. But if the man is showing growth, and not just saying the right words, you don't walk away. You walk forward. Together." That evening, Nora called David. "Hey," she said. David froze when he saw her name on his phone. "Nora. Hey. Is everything okay? I was thinking, maybe we can talk. Just you and me. No Sophie. No distractions." David agreed instantly. They met at a quiet cafe near Piccadilly Gardens. It was where they used to go before they had Sophie, before life got heavy. Nora wore a simple blue coat. David looked nervous, like a man on a first date. They ordered tea, sat in silence for a moment. Then Nora said, "I see the changes, and I see the effort. I'm not blind to it." David let out a slow breath. "Thank you." But I need to be honest, she added. I still have walls. And I can't come home until I feel safe emotionally. I need to feel like your wife, not your housemate. Not just the mother of your child. David nodded. I understand. Whatever you need, space, time, anything, I'll give it. Just know I'm not going anywhere. That night, for the first time in months, Nora smiled at him. Not a polite smile. A real one. Rebuilding. Nora didn't rush back. Instead, they started dating again. Yes, dating. As husband and wife. David picked her up for weekend lunches. They talked about everything: pain, love, childhood wounds. They even saw a marriage counselor once a week. It wasn't perfect. Some days were hard. Some nights, Nora still cried. But David never stopped showing up. He listened. He apologized again, this time for smaller things he used to overlook. He asked questions like, "How was your day?" and really listened to the answer. Sophie noticed too. "Mummy, Daddy smiles more now," she said one night. Nora hugged her tight and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart. He's learning." 3 months later. It was Sophie's 7th birthday. They planned a small party at the park. Nora stood by the picnic table, helping set up snacks. David came up behind her and gently placed a hand on her back. "I'm glad we're doing this together," he said. Nora looked at him. "Me too." Then, after a moment of silence, she said, "I'm ready to come home." David blinked, shocked. "You mean it?" She nodded. "Yes. I'm not saying everything is perfect, but we've both changed. We've fought for this. I think we're ready. Coming home again." Moving back was emotional. Sophie danced around the living room yelling, "We're all back together." David helped Nora unpack her things. They sat on the sofa that night, drinking tea just like old times. David said, "Thank you for not giving up." Nora replied, "Thank you for making me believe again." They weren't the same couple from before. They were better, wiser, stronger, because they had walked through the fire together. Learned the final lessons. 1. Real love is not perfect, it's persistent. 2. Healing takes time, but consistent effort rebuilds trust. 3. Leaving isn't always the end. Sometimes it's the wake-up call a relationship needs. 4. Even broken homes can be rebuilt if both people are willing. What would you have done if you were Nora? Have you ever walked away to be seen? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Someone else might need your story. If this touched your heart, give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life stories about love, heartbreak, and healing.